o'clock and would like to call this meeting to order. Appreciate your all's attendance. This is the regular business meeting for August 24th of the Scott County Fiscal Court. I would like to ask everyone to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Let us pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Ms. Hamilton, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Hostetler?
Present.
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mr. Wallace?
Here.
Mr. Corman?
Present.
Mr. Ellison? Mr. Pratt?
Here.
Mr. Livingston?
Here.
Mr. Culbertson?
Here.
Judge Covington?
Present. Next item on our agenda is consideration of our minutes from our previous meeting. Any questions or comments related to those as presented?
Motion.
Motion and a second from Mr. Jones. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Number 5, transfers as presented in your packet. Any questions or comments related to that?
Motion approved.
Motion and a second. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We will now move down to number 6, bills. Is there anything to consider there?
Just the bills that were sent out.
Nothing, no handshakes? Any questions or comments in the bills that were shared? Motion for Mr. Livingston, second for Mr. Pratt. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We have a guest, Patty.
Yep.
How are you, Patty?
I'm well, thank you.
We're so glad to see you and appreciate you being here with us.
Certainly.
You passed out just some updates on the 22-23 fiscal year that I'm excited to hear about.
Okay.
So many good things going on at the library. I was recently, last Saturday, or 2 Saturdays ago, at the library, and just what a great facility. So many options, and just so many different things that it's not just books.
That's right. It's not just books anymore.
So,
although books are still important. We don't want to discount that. But you can see on your handout, I've just briefly summarized. We have to do an annual report every year. And these were the things that we thought were most notable to just point out to you. So over 170,000 people visited the library last year. We have a door counter, so we are able to get a fairly accurate number. One of the things that we think is really important, that over 106,000 people came to the library and used our Wi-Fi. And typically when people come in, they stay a while. They're not just in and out. They come and stay, and we have some people, especially during the summer, who might stay 5 and 6 hours with us. And we suspect maybe their homes aren't adequately air conditioned. So they come and stay a while. We do an awful lot of programs, and you'll notice at the very bottom, we did over 2,000 notarized documents this year. We have a free notary service every hour that we're open. So we have 9 of our staff members who are notaries, and they take training and do a great job of that. So not all libraries do that, but we think it's an important service to offer. I've been really pleased to work with Judge Covington on the pop-up driver's license clinics that we had this year, and we've already scheduled 4 more for next year, and we work with the Department of Transportation to schedule those. They're always full and well attended. This year, when I was talking to John Burke, he always calls on me as the PVA. He said, we really need a place for PVA training to take place next year. Do you think we could meet here? And I said, well, sure, you can do your training here. So I hardly got back to my office that someone from the Department of Revenue was calling to schedule the PVA training for next June. So they'll use one of our rooms for a whole week and train PVAs across the state. So I think that's a real important thing that we offer, is use of our meeting rooms. And it's all kinds of groups. And you'll see that over 2,000 different groups used our meeting rooms this past year. But why I'm really here tonight is to tell you about the tax rate, and it's up for your acceptance tonight. So the Board of Trustees held their August meeting, and they selected, of course, to take the compensating rate. So the real property tax will be 4.7, and the personal property is 5.01. So these are both of these figures are down from last year. Last year it was 5.0 for real property and 5.3 for personal property. So they've been pretty accurate in figuring out what the amount of money that we'll get. It seems to work out pretty well. And this is the only source of income for the public library. We don't get payroll tax. We don't have grants. This is it for us. So it's really an important thing. And I think through the years, some of you who I've seen many times before can attest to the fact that we're very, very careful with spending the taxpayers' dollars. So this is up for your acceptance tonight. So any questions?
Question?
A couple. Do you mind to go back to the pop-up, you call them pop-up driver's license training? Is that for, I mean, what is?
For people in Scott County, and it's so they don't have to travel out. When they closed a lot of the driver's licenses offices throughout the state, they decided to offer these pop-up clinics. And so people from the Department of Transportation come and they use our Wi-Fi and meeting rooms, and they make appointments. So really all we have to do is help them get set up each time. They advertise it, we push it out through our social media as well, and appointments are made. And they'll take some walk-ins, but typically it's by appointment. So you can get a real ID or renew your driver's license, either one. But it's just for Scott County residents. So if you live somewhere else, you need to look for somewhere, you know, in your own county. But they've been really well attended, and they are eager to do more next year. So we've already scheduled them for next year to use our facility.
That's interesting.
Anything else?
Questions, comments?
One other thing, I was just wondering where the library's at, like financially. I know, have you got some projects on the horizon?
Well, right now, we're getting ready to do a new 5-year strategic plan. So that's yet to be determined. We have not a blade of grass left at our current location to build on. So, you know, we do know that in the future there will probably need to be another facility somewhere in the county. It's just where and what kind of facility would it be? You all would be surprised at the change, and this is something we're watching carefully. We used to have so many people who checked out physical books, and now the people are checking out e-books and e-audiobooks, which we have to purchase. So, and have them available through a platform for people to download using their library cards. So we're working on that. How do we apportion our money so that we have some of everything? So in the future, I think the biggest need in Scott County is meeting room space. So it may just be a facility somewhere where we have meeting rooms available for people to use, but we would run it. So there's going to be a lot of planning in the next year or so to work out what we're going to do.
I'll make a motion to accept the.
Okay.
We have a motion, second for Mr. Livingston. Any other questions, comments?
And if you don't have a library, call me Bill.
With that said, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes to accept those library tax rates. Thank you, Patty, very much, as always. Next, ordinance 2309, reapportionment. Now, what I'd like to do is begin with any questions or comments related to, we've had a draft submitted by the Reapportionment Commission, and you've had time to review that. There's been a couple of emails, one from our clerk that shared some concerns that she and her staff had with some items related to the draft. And then from that, you also had, an email from the Reapportionment Commission penned by Tommy Druin that, essentially addressed some of those concerns. Now, if anyone would like to ask questions, make comments, any of our guests, if Ms. Johnson would like to make any comments related to the draft or concerns, be happy to entertain that at this time.
Judge, I'll just say, per your email earlier this week about the Georgetown Mobile Estates that was on the east end of Lyle Road. I believe if we included that in the map, in the reapportionment map, what that would do is alleviate one of the issues that Ms. Johnson had brought up as far as forced precinct. And I think there was also a question about the privacy, and I think it's a federal law, if I'm not mistaken, about privacy. And if we exchange that with Cassidy Heights subdivision, which is on the west side of Lyle Road, based on the numbers that planning and zoning had, you could switch one and then take it out, and it would be kind of an even exchange.
I was going to speak to that. You know, if the court wants to entertain this possibility that would address that forced precinct and voter privacy, and it would possibly, or my hope would be, it would eliminate any voter confusion for that community. You know, one side of the road versus the other side of the road. You know, that's when I think of that community, I think of it, you know, as one. So Whitley was kind enough to come to the office and had her laptop, and we worked on this, and the numbers, if you switch this, the numbers will stay within that 5% threshold. As I was working on this with Whitley, Magistrate David Livingston dropped by, and David, you know, was there. Whitley and I, and David even suggested and looked at, you know, could you do any adjustments that would stay within the 5% threshold without having the domino effect of 2 or 3 other changes. And, you know, part of my concern is that I want to honor the process, and you know, we appointed a reapportionment commission to make the draft and make the recommendation. And, you know, the recommendation that they have made meets, you know, there's not going to be any perfect map, but it meets the requirements of the statute. And I believe by considering this adjustment, where we're talking about that Whitley's pulled up for us, and Whitley, thank you for being here another night. By the way, we appreciate you very much. But that Georgetown Estates would all be in District 3, and if you go just up Lyle Road, the Cassidy Heights, Jalomic Drive would transition over to District 4, and there's no other connections to Jalomic. There's no other connections.
Yeah, there's no other subdivisions that are tied into.
No, and I've not heard of any, you know, discussions or proposals to tie into that. And I would say that Jalomic Drive would be against anybody tying into it, just because it would become a racetrack getting out of those other subdivisions. So that if the court wants to consider that, it's the pleasure of the court. If the court does not, please know that respect that 1,000%. Comments, Mr. Hostetler?
A couple. You talked about process. I know that there's one constable that's from the commission's recommendation will be not living in his district. I'm just wondering, what does that look like for him to serve his term out? He continues to do that, but at the end of that term, he won't run. I mean, if he so desires to run again, I'm just wondering what that looks like.
Yeah. My understanding, and I would be happy to have any input from our county clerk or Amber or our county attorney. From my understanding, he is duly elected and will serve as constable until the end of his term.
Yeah, well, my understanding is just whatever we vote on, whatever we do, that takes effect like in November. And I was just trying to understand, you know.
My understanding is that it would take effect, but it wouldn't really take effect until your next election.
And you serve his term out, but then the next time you run in
he would run in his newly defined magisterial or constable district. If he, you know, that's what I believe the facts to be.
Yeah. Okay, I just don't know what that looks like, and I was just wondering, because that was one of the issues that I had that with that constable being taken out of their district. And I know that could have happened otherwise to other offices. And the other thing is, I'll just go back to what I said before. I'm still concerned about, they talked about compactness, and District 1, they extended it, which is not compactness. So I've seen several maps, but the one that the county clerk presented or talked about the last time, I've got a copy of that. That's much more, it's, as you said earlier, there's no perfect map, and this one's not perfect either, but it draws it back up and keeps it spread out in like it was, or as close as it could be. Understand that District 4 exploded in population compared to the rest of the county.
Management.
What's that?
Due to good magisterial management.
Well, so anyhow, those are my concerns. Those folks that I know they talked about, and was in one of the emails as well, about up in the Sadieville area, that basically all the Sadie, you know, they're not all residents of Sadieville, but that's their mailing address, that whole part of the county. They may live in Porter, but they don't have a Porter mailing address. They live in their address, their mailing address is Sadieville. And those folks have the same, I expressed this before, I won't go through it all again, but those folks have the same concerns. That's not to take away anything from the folks down on 460 and those neighborhoods, but these folks up here travel the same roads. When we have a snowstorm, I hear from the same people all through that district. When we have the windstorms and the thunderstorms, same thing. Flooding, same thing. JR gets the calls, I get the calls, but it comes from those same people. And to me, that's one of the bottom line things that we're supposed to be doing. I like defined lines too. You know, like they want to use US 25, US 460, and so forth as dividing lines, but in my mind, that doesn't serve the public. So I'm totally in favor, or not in favor, of the commission's map, although I appreciate their work. I would personally much rather see the county clerk's solution. That's my view.
Questions or comments from anyone else?
Well, I'll make a comment, and like everyone said, I appreciate all the work everyone's put into it, and you guys coming back and looking at it again. And I'd like to ask Rebecca, I mean, does this new modified map, this third version, possibly address the concerns you have? I know maybe not all. Does that really help? Yeah, if you don't mind.
Well, how I would address this question, I would say in my capacity as a non-voting member and as the county clerk, in my position on the commission, that's the position from which I came to the fiscal court to address some areas of the map for your consideration. And I'm taking that into account from primarily from an election official standpoint. In my view, we kind of ordered those, or the way they were addressed to the court, and the way I addressed them in the follow-up email that was, I think, Mr. Pratt, you asked for that. Could we follow that workshop meeting? Could I list those items and kind of describe that in detail to give us some time and space to consider that, look at the map? They were definitely in order, in priority order. As an election official, my main issue and main priority, it would be what's been addressed here tonight. So by making this change with Georgetown Mobile Estates, removing that particular forced precinct, because if you'll recall, there were 121 registered voters in that very small precinct. That was of great concern, and I kind of laid that out, how that could potentially play out in an election, and particularly in a low turnout primary. So by correcting that area of the map, if I recall, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I've looked at it a lot, I'm pretty sure that that will leave with the commission's map that they have voted on and put in front of you, myself being a part of that commission, with the map that you're considering, that would leave no forced precinct with fewer than 1,000 voters. That's a very comfortable range, and that would remove that issue. So to answer your question, as an election official, and I think that's my primary responsibility to address areas of the map as a member of that commission, that is definitely the primary issue. The other issues I wouldn't put in that category. I would describe it as areas of consideration for you as magistrates of your districts, for your constituents, for representation, if you see where I'm going with that. So those, I would consider those areas of consideration. That's something that it doesn't affect me as a countywide elected official, but that would be something in consideration for your districts, just from a constituent standpoint. My priority as an election official, I'm pleased to hear what's on the table in, I believe there's been a motion.
No motion
Or you're
yet.
considering a motion to make that change. And I would highly advocate that change. I'm pleased to hear that the fiscal court would go work with Whitley, our GIS analyst, and work to find a solution to that. Those other areas of consideration, I really wouldn't, I've kind of laid that out and addressed why I might point those out as from a constituent, from a voter standpoint. But I would really leave that in the hands of the fiscal court to measure out those other areas of concern. Does that answer your question?
100%.
Okay.
David,
Before you go, what is your definition of compactness? Because we've heard that word a lot when we've talked about this, and I don't know that we've asked, what is your definition of compactness versus what I may have, I haven't read the statute on it, and I don't know that the statute defines it. So what exactly does that mean? Or
Well-
thereabouts? Because it's a vague term, and there is some case law on it, but I don't think there's ever been a full description that I'm aware of.
Well, Mr. Druin, who is a part of that commission, he has worked in Frankfurt with the laying of state lines. And he brought to the commission a formula that I'm not familiar with. It's probably something that's talked about on the state level. And I think, and I don't, you would want to fact check me on this, but I believe Mr. Druin would point out that on a technicality, if you put it into that formula, Whitley, can you help me remember what that formula is called?
The REOC and Polsby, I think.
It's on page 7.
Well, there's two different formulas, the REOC and Polsby copy. So I think.
See how smart she is? I don't even, I
So-
couldn't even repeat what she
Can I
said. She
add
just-
from a PowerPoint that was shared, and here's the slide. While districts are required to be compact, neither statute nor case law set out perfect definition of what that means. There are numerous mathematical formulas for measuring district compactness. However, the most commonly cited case is called Polsby-Popper, and I'm not making that up. The two formulas look at different things, but if they are in agreement, you typically have a compact district. It should be remembered that while compact is a legal requirement, it cannot always be met due to odd county shapes, precinct, I can't read it, but areas of population. So it's I don't know if I really helped you.
Okay.
So, okay, because
So
I
if
didn't.
I could, can I? I'd like to
absolutely.
pull all that
Yeah.
together. So with that mathematical calculation, I think on a technicality, this map that you're looking at that the commission has approved and put forward, on a technicality, I believe in a numerical sense, it comes out slightly more compact. Yes, Whitley. What I'm, again, my view would be from.
Can I ask for clarification?
Yes.
The proposed map comes out more compact than the previous?
When you, well,
I'm talking, or the existing?
I don't know.
I'm just trying to clarify.
Sure. No, I'm not sure about the current map that we're working off of. I'm not sure if we made a comparison to that, but I'm talking about the other drafts that we looked at.
The original draft.
If you're talking about the county clerk, some solution map where I brought forward some of those issues, that map that we did a side-by-side comparison. So if we're comparing it to that one, that's all I can speak to. On a technicality, I believe this one mathematically is more compact.
And compact is not,
If you put it in a mathematical
it's not the
form.
visual of.
Yes, yes
and
no.
here's why here's where I just said case law. There's a Supreme Court case that I was looking at the other day, and I just pulled it up, and it is not the visual, it's not the span of the map. It is actually, it has to be contiguous and include as much of the same territory as possible, so not splitting neighborhoods as much as possible.
There's a definition right here, says the principle of the constituents residing within an electoral district should live as near to one another as possible. That is the definition.
So a neighborhood, you don't want to take a neighborhood and split the neighborhood from one, like take Bradford and split it in half and put it in District 6 and put the rest of it in
Actually,
District
the
7.
definition.
No, that's what the case law says from the
Three
Supreme
things,
Court.
Compact, contiguous, and in population within that
Right.
5% threshold.
Yes. Both of these maps, again, look, try to pull all that together. Both of these maps are practically the same in compactness from that mathematical standpoint with that formula. I think this one that you're looking at is slightly more compact. What I'm talking about, the perspective you've heard from me, is what you've described there. Neighborhoods being kept together, what we recognize as communities
Right.
within our greater Scott County community. Those communities, those subdivisions, those neighborhoods, however you break that down. I would look at, Sadieville or Stamping Ground as a community versus Bradford, a subdivision, a neighborhood. So the perspective you heard from me was a strong voice on saying, let's worry less about the shape, but let's keep those neighborhoods together.
My neighborhood may have more population than Sadieville and Stamping Ground. We've got 900 homes.
So are you saying then
That
that the current
that may be
map
possible.
that Judge Covington and Willie worked on, that we're seeing tonight, does it meet that definition of compactness then? And maybe I think that's what everybody's asking. I'm trying to get at, or we're all trying to get at, do we keep those neighborhoods and things together?
There is not a specific number that we're trying to reach on compactness like there is on deviation of population. So that's where we look at that plus or minus 5%, staying within that. There is a specific number that we need to reach. There is not a specific number that you would be in violation of if you didn't reach that number. So that's why I think what you read, Judge Covington, was it's not exactly defined. There has not been a number pinpointed like there is with keeping it within that 5% or that maximum of 10% deviation, 5% one way or the other. So that's key. That has to be done from a legal standpoint. Compactness is not. It's sort of like a very strong suggestion not to be political and make very odd shapes that grab weird sections and in doing so, you create a very odd, I think it's a safeguard. It's a warning against that, and it's an admonition for those that handle the map. Keep your voting communities together and don't do irregular things where you break up lines. And I think it's also about just grabbing it. If it looks like maybe an odd shape was grabbed, you might investigate that and see if it was done for political reasons or if it made sense within a voting community. I think that's a good way to look at it.
So Whitley, I've been watching as you've spoken, and you can't see, but Whitley's been back there working And you pulled up an Excel spreadsheet that had what looked like to me compact.
Well, I think those were from, I was trying to see if I had some compactness scores from the current version here, but I don't. They're from, I guess, a previous.
Just have to recalculate it for two.
But if you agree with me, Whitley, from working with the commission, I think when that was measured within that formula that Mr. Durham brought, they were very close.
Yeah.
From a
The first
technical
draft
standpoint.
in the draft that you presented.
Yes, the
Okay.
compactness was very close on all of our drafts, actually, from a technical standpoint. The other way to look at it is, as we said, voting communities and trying to create shapes. I think that are well, one way it's been suggested is close to round as possible, then it's more compact. Of course, we're not going to get that. We're working with census blocks. And so the census blocks may create some odd shapes. A road or creek that we follow might create that. So I think really from a practical standpoint, it's to look at keeping neighborhoods and voting communities together. And I think you have to find a good balance within all of what's been said.
So back to one more thing, and David read it, and I had read that before, but I couldn't find it recently. When you read, David, about I wanted him to, because I can't find it.
David,
What's that?
Rick's asking you if,
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
We're looking at the case law stuff.
That's what you just read right before Rebecca responded to it, about not changing the district. I forget just how it worded it. Because I remember in some of our breakout sessions in last couple of years, when we knew we were coming up to this, that was something that somebody said, not to change the district no more than you had to. And it goes to keeping the communities together, and that just goes to my whole reason that I'm opposed to the commission's recommendation.
if I'd like to interrupt to let the record reflect that Mr. Ellison was now present.
Do we need to start over?
No, no do-over.
Do you have that there, David? I just wanted.
I actually I texted it to you, the link.
I will say,
It's a short document.
in addition to all of what's been said, as much as you want the shape to look very nice and neat and compact, as you recall, by law, that we have to meet that the population balance within the districts. So when it comes down to that, you may have to grab something that creates a shape that's not as pleasing to the eye because you need
Because of the census blocks.
because of the census block and because you need that population to find that balance. So again, I'll just add that, but it's just a mixture of all of that, finding a good balance within all of that.
Because we did look the other day at moving around, and it just, the more you tried to correct, the more you had to correct. It just got worse and worse.
Yeah.
I mean, the map that they've done is very solid. It's
Yeah.
just,
Any other questions or comments? And what is the pleasure of the court?
Well, I can't find that statement. I didn't go to Evelyn Wood's sped reading course.
Just would it be appropriate to vote on the one change that we pointed out at the beginning, or should we do that as amended when we get to the ordinance stage?
Cam sent an additional draft of an ordinance.
Yeah.
So Cam, can you speak to that?
Depending on what you all want to do. If you want to, you can, if you all want to, if you vote as a majority to approve the map as it was recommended, I have an ordinance, that says that. If you wish to make an amendment to it, either by adopting the proposed amendment that you've talked about that Judge Covington sent out via email, that's fine, and I can read a summary. And then I will probably, what I'll need to do is we can go forward, but I'll read the summary, then a narrative
description of those two districts, since they've been changed, will have to be drafted, and so I'll have to, revise the ordinance based on that, if that makes sense. And I don't know, you may have other modifications that somebody else wants to bring up, I don't know.
Well, I was gonna ask Rebecca, because I'd like to make a motion on the county clerk's map personally. But with that said, first I wanted to ask, and with all this color coding, does that fix what Judge Covington sent out? Your all's map, proposed map?
Amber.
What Chad was just talking about?
Right. The,
Because I'm looking on here.
the adjustment to the commission's final
Right.
draft, how do we refer to it? Final,
That little neck proposed.
be clear on what we're calling
So
final
we're
draft.
talking, you're talking
The
about.
commission's final draft, the adjustment that Judge Covington and Mr. Wallace have proposed, I would say that addresses, to my satisfaction as an election official, the issue of the forced precincts. Because every map that we look at had, I think the minimum we ever came up with was 3. I think the most we had on the draft was 7. So I think we would be down to 4. 3. 4? 4. We would be down to 4 on this map. But because there would be no forced precinct with fewer than 1,000 voters, I would say that sufficiently addresses my issue as county clerk of the forced precinct issue. That would address that issue to my satisfaction. There were about 4 other areas that I addressed. This would be my primary as your election official. It would satisfy that. The other areas, I think that's better, something better considered, resolved. I think that's better put in the hands of the fiscal court and of the magistrates of the districts on those other 4 areas. I will leave that to your discretion. As your election official, county election official, the first and the primary issue will be addressed
with that.
by that.
So, Mr. Wallace, was your question answered?
Yeah, it was, I just didn't know.
I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, no,
And then
it was
Mr. Hostetler.
Yes, sir.
Out of respect to you, you just mentioned a second ago that you were interested in making a motion. So,
I am for the county clerk's solution map. I'll make that motion that we accept that.
is there a second?
I'll second.
Do we need to do roll call?
I want to know what you're talking about before I vote on it.
To make it simpler,
Which one is?
there's 3. There's
Well, that was brought to the
commission
court.
map,
It was brought.
the clerk
Everybody-
suggested map,
Right.
and then the updated
The
map.
updated map that I sent out.
He's saying Rebecca's suggested that.
Yeah.
I've numbered them 1, 2, and 3 on my
They
page.
gave us the,
In the order that they were
Yes.
presented to us.
Could you
Now-
just repeat what 1, 2, and 3 is?
Yes, 1 is the commission map,
The very first one.
The first draft presented by the Reapportionment Commission.
2 is the clerk suggested map, is what I called it, clerk solution map, whatever. And,
that's that one.
yes,
Yep.
and 3 is the updated map that I think is still the commission map with the one adjustment
That we saw.
that Joe had.
I don't know if you saw it when you came in.
That was the one we saw on email.
I sent it by email, the last one I sent by email,
And that's the order they came into.
so there's a motion and there's a second. There's a motion and a second. Any other questions? And we'll do a roll call.
Give me just 1 second.
So Judge, on the roll call, are we gonna yes or no the motion, or we're gonna suggest the map that we want?
No. You have a motion and you have a second. The motion was for the second version, the Rebecca Johnson, County Clerk's version. So we have a motion, we have a second. Are you ready for the roll call?
Yes, so you'll say yes if you're for it. Got it?
Got it.
Mr. Hostetler?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
No.
Mr. Wallace,
No.
Mr. Corman,
Yes.
Mr. Ellison,
No.
Mr. Pratt,
No.
Mr. Livingston,
No.
Judge Covington.
No. Motion dies. Is there any other questions or comments, or would there be any other desire or such to make any other motion?
I would like to make the motion, we go ahead and accept this map that
Number
was
30.
presented this evening
So there's a motion
with the correct.
to accept, and we have a second. Questions or comments?
Who seconds that?
Dwayne Ellison?
Getting in the game quick.
So we accept the map and then there is a reading of the ordinance?
Correct.
If it's
Correct.
prepared? Okay. Is
And
that?
Amber,
I'm good.
Amber
Okay.
was kind enough.
She's already written out the narrative.
She's done the narrative, and
Oh, there she is.
we're grateful for your help, Amber, and all the work you've done as well.
So she did a narrative for Matt.
Correct. So we have a motion, we have a second. Any other questions? We'll do another roll call.
Mr. Hostetler,
No.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Wallace,
Yes.
Mr. Corman,
No.
Mr. Ellison,
Yes.
Mr. Pratt,
Yes.
Mr. Livingston,
Yes.
Judge Covington.
Yes. Motion passes. I'll ask Cam now to read the summary.
Just 1 second. All right, ordinance number 23-09. An ordinance establishing the updated geographic boundaries for magisterial districts in Scott County. Summary. 1, provides that pursuant to KRS 67.045, which sets out the legal process requiring the county magisterial boundaries be redrawn based upon the population figures resulting from each decennial census, that the fiscal court has appointed 3 citizen members to a magisterial reapportionment commission with the county clerk serving as a non-voting member, which has produced a written report establishing the estimated population of each magisterial district and its recommendation as to the new geographic boundaries of each district, and filed that report with the Scott County clerk and each magistrate on July 20th, 2023. 2, adopts the recommendations of the magisterial reapportionment commission with the exception of a modification to District 3 and District 4 as amended by the Scott County Fiscal Court on August 24th, 2023, and provides a written description of the precinct boundaries and locations. 3, directs that all precinct boundaries and locations shall be set by the Scott County Clerk's office and be recorded for public notice and access purposes. 4, takes effect on November 8th, 2023. The full text of this ordinance is available for examination at the office of the Scott Fiscal Court Clerk, 101 East Main Street, Georgetown, Kentucky, 40324. Introduced and publicly read first time August 24th, 2023.
Now, just for legality questions, we voted and accepted that third version. Then we read this summary.
So now you call
We need to call the,
all in favor.
yeah, that's, I'm just making sure that I'm.
Yeah, I think so, so that you can do the
Yes.
second reading next time.
Yes. So, Mr. Livingston's got a motion, we got a second from Mr. Pratt. Then all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
1, Mr. Hostetler. Motion passes for the first reading. Thank you all. Thank Rebecca, thank Amber, thank our reapportionment commission as well.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
This has only happened once every 10 years, so it's been a little bit more than 10 years. So this goes into effect when?
November.
November 8th.
November 8th. After this general election. So
Right.
it would be appropriate after November 8th to reach out if we picked up any new area to reach out to the voters in that area to let them know the map has been.
Well, I think this was addressed earlier. The boundaries change, but they are not, but every elected official will serve out their term until the time of that next election. Those constituents will have the same representation until the next election determines, based on the new boundaries, who will then serve. So every elected official, just like the constable scenario, you'll serve out your term. So you don't start serving new constituents as of November 8th until there's been an election of that type for which affects each official. Does that make
I
sense?
think you said it. I
Okay.
agree with your statement. So,
Yeah. So one other question along that line, because I got a phone call last night, I just about forgot about it. They were looking on the website, they were looking for this information. They had seen an article in the paper. So what's going to get posted? And I told them that there were more than one map that had been talked about, which there has been. And they said, well, I can't find any maps anywhere. So what happens? Because those folks, so I don't think these people are going to contend anything, but I don't know. But there is a process. If someone in the public doesn't like it, there's now a process that they can contend or dispute or whatever. I don't know.
I'll let our county attorney, Cam.
Yeah, that's.
Once this becomes approved, then they've got 20 days to file an action in circuit court.
Is that after the second
I think
reading?
it's after you all, assuming it's approved at the next meeting.
That's what I'm saying. It would be after.
And I think that starts the clock.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know that they were all interested in that. They just they just said, where's the information? They'd seen an article in the paper. I didn't see the article in the paper, and they said there was not a map there, and they were asking, they went to the judge's website or Facebook page or whatever, and couldn't find anything. So I said, well, I'll ask about it.
Well, we'll certainly post a copy of.
And there will be an ad in the paper after this meeting.
So.
It says, well, crap, I was trying to read it and then, okay. Within 20 days of the establishment of the districts by the fiscal court, any registered voter of the county may bring an action in the circuit court to enforce the provisions of this section. So.
And then the circuit judge would review.
Yeah.
And confirm whether or not that the proposed or the approved map met the requirements of that statute. So.
I think the big thing, they were just looking for the information, and I said.
Yeah, that's a good question, and I can, if they want, I can, get them a copy of the
Rick,
statute.
I'll be happy to.
Well, they were just looking for it to be posted somewhere,
Well,
so if you're.
But I'd be happy to reach out to them and send them a copy if they have email. If you'll
I'll
let me
ask
know
them
who
if
it
they want.
is after the meeting,
Yeah.
I'll be happy to do
Do
that.
that, or if they're that interested, I'll tell them to call you.
Yeah,
I mean,
here every
you know,
day.
gets me out of the middle.
Resolution 2320, election equipment grant. This is a very positive thing. Rebecca, this grant will cover, it's a total of $158,546 worth of equipment. It includes a Verity Scan Duo print conversion. That's the biggest, it's a big item, $46,900. A Verity print bundle, $88,125, and then some additional accessories. The auto ballot kit as well. Would you like to speak to any of this, Rebecca?
Well, I would just say I looked that over, and of course Michelle has that all in order. But I think that's fabulous. I think $158,000.
$158,000.
And so that's fabulous that Scott County benefited from that grant money, put it to good use with new election equipment. And I think there's even some grant money still to be, a little bit left to be utilized.
Yeah.
So I think it's great for our county that we received that. And basically we, made the purchase, it's being reimbursed. So,
Yeah.
Fantastic. Those dollars can stay in the budget,
Sure.
the Scott County
You need a
fiscal
motion?
court budget for other
you need to read
other
So we've got to
purposes.
read this resolution first. Thank you,
Do you
Rebecca.
have anything to add to that, Amber? No? Okay.
Could you read that
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Email it, Amber. Resolution 2320, House Bill 1, County Clerk Election Equipment Grant. Authorizing resolution, County of Scott. Adoption of a resolution of the Scott County Fiscal Court authorizing the filing of a Kentucky House Bill HB 1 County Clerk's Election Equipment Grant application for up to $158,546 in HB 1 project funds with the Department for Local Government, or DLG, authorizing and directing the Scott County Judge Executive to execute any documents which are deemed necessary by DLG to carry out this project, and authorizing the Judge Executive to act as the authorized correspondent for this project. Whereas Scott County, or County, desires to purchase election equipment approved by the State Board of Elections, or SBE, on behalf of the residents of Scott County by supporting the HB1 project, and whereas it is recognized that HB1 money is available to the county for the purposes stated herein pursuant to 2022 Kentucky General Assembly HB1 budget bill, impose certain obligations and responsibilities upon the county and will require, among other things, 1, approval of a satisfactory application transmitted to SBE for approval, and 2, other obligations of the county in connection with receiving the HB1 grant of monies for the purposes stated herein. Now therefore be it resolved this 24th day of August 2023 by Scott County Fiscal Court that a HB1 County Clerk Election Equipment Grant application on behalf of the county for HB1 monies up to $158,546 for clerk election equipment project. Project shall be submitted to DLG. The county shall provide such additional information and furnish such documentation as may be required, and the county judge executive shall act as the authorized correspondent for this project, done this 24th day of August, 2023.
Thank you. Any questions or comments, and would there be a motion?
Motion.
Motion from Mr. Hostetler, second from Mr. Corman. Any other questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. We'll go now, essentially, it's a professional services agreement that's within the Amen House CDBG grant. There is no monies outside the grant allocation that comes from any general fund dollars from the court, but my recommendation would be to accept this agreement, and would there be any questions?
The agreement's actually, just to clarify, with Bluegrass Area.
Yeah, it's with Bluegrass Area Development District to administer the grant. And there's a lot of paperwork, a lot of, it's essentially like a project manager for paperwork.
But I read through, there's no commitment on the courts financially?
$750,000 grant that's all been awarded.
Bluegrass Ad will be the project manager, administrator, and $37,000 of that will go to Bluegrass Ad to administer all of the.
It's up to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Motion, is there a second? Second from Mr. Jones. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Jelly Broils, welcome. We have a detention center contract with LaRue County. It's pretty cut and dry. If we reach 140 threshold is what it says, then it's just formalizing an agreement to send inmates to LaRue County for $50 per day. The normal responsibility of insurance or medical coverage is all in there. It's pretty cut and dry. Any questions or comments? Would there be a motion? I see a motion from Mr. Livingston, a second by Mr. Corman.
One comment, and Jailer Broyles can answer this. Isn't this, the cost and everything, isn't it similar to our other agreements? The cost per day, per inmate?
Yes, yes.
Is-
And the judge mentioned that medical was included in it. It's not prescriptions, and it's not extraordinary occurrences where
Just our
somebody
normal-
gets sent out to the hospital or
Right,
something.
it's just a normal medical coverage that we're responsible for.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, well, but it's very similar to
It is.
the other
Yeah.
agreements we've already got. Okay.
yeah.
Thank you. So we have a motion, we have a second. Any other questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you all.
Make a quick comment. Some really hot days, we've seen inmates out picking up trash, and that's much appreciated. It's a lot of, yeah, a lot of hard, hot work.
I appreciate it. I actually, because it got so hot today and it's going to be so hot tomorrow, they're not going to be going out these 2 days, but I appreciate you saying that, Mr. Foreman.
JR and I were out today looking at a few things, and we were in Sky Canyon Park, and the inmates cleaned up a big fence row, and I mean, it looked fantastic. So, you know, I think it's great, and it's really appreciated. Thank you. Electrical inspector contract. This contract, we are approving Daniel Kane to operate. Would you have a question, comment?
I might have a conflict there because I signed a letter for him.
If you'd like to officially recuse yourself.
Please.
Yes.
I would like to recuse
Yes.
myself on any vote on this.
Okay. But essentially, what
Be
this is
gone.
doing. You don't have to leave.
Chad was, yeah,
Get out.
Go outside.
You all did that to me one time.
If I leave, I may not come back.
But
Chad says you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.
we are approving him as on-site at Toyota electrical inspector. We are not responsible for any fees, and it's
Or liabilities or anything like
liabilities
that.
or anything. And this has been in place before, and this is a new person that's taking the place of another person that's transitioning out. And any questions or comments?
Basically, we're just allowing this person to inspect out there
the
inside the
county.
county.
Yeah.
Without anything attached. They've still got to go by
And
the
he's-
state's guidelines.
Yeah,
and
he's
so forth.
passed the
Right.
licensure portion of this, so.
So,
Motion?
Yeah.
Motion for Mr. Hostler, second for Mr. Ellison.
What's the gentleman's name?
Daniel Kane.
Kane.
Any other questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. I'd like to move now to Sheriff's Office purchase, and Lieutenant Betson's here to address this request. Lieutenant, thank you.
Thank you. We actually have two separate things, myself and Lieutenant Johnson, so I'll start with
Lieutenant Johnson, how are you as well? Thanks for being here.
mine first. Unfortunately, in March, we applied for the Law Enforcement Protection Fund grant for firearms. Unfortunately, they had a lot of requests, and they prioritized body armor first before everything else, so we did not get the grant. So we're here today to request the funding for the firearms. I have a quote here that Captain Nettles got from Keesler Police Supply. They do have the state contract. That price is $36,591.61. That would include 58 firearms with the red dot sights, which we discussed the benefits of back in March. They'll improve the ability of accuracy and shooting for deputies, including our older deputies in courts. They also allow for one focal plane and a wider field of vision as both eyes are open. This quote also includes us selling back our firearms currently at a price of $300 each, which would be $17,000, $400 off the price, which is already included when I gave the $36,000 number. Keesler will buy those directly, or we have the option of selling those to our deputies within the agency for $300. Any deputies that don't purchase them, Keesler would still purchase the firearms.
So I think what you're referring to is we need to consider the request to purchase.
Yes.
But we also need to consider surplusing and allowing our current staff deputies to purchase their duty weapon.
Yes, sir.
At a price of $300. And
Hold on, there's a whole KRS on purchasing those. Are you familiar?
I am not. I know
Have
when.
it, and
When I first arrived years ago, we did it. I don't know exactly how it worked then, but it's been almost a decade since that
I
happened.
have it on my desk.
Okay.
Copy, because we'll need all the serial numbers, and then they have to meet all 4 of the requirements.
And it may be something where it's easier just to sell it back to Keesler's if that's the case, and that's. Huh?
You have to carry on duty and things like that.
Okay.
So what you're saying is the standard of the requirement, we'll be all
They will
right.
probably qualify, I'm just saying we can't vote on that part right now.
Okay.
Does Cam have any issues with them buying them back?
I'll be honest, I wouldn't,
So-
like, I'll trust Stacy on that one. I didn't research this one ahead of time, so. yeah.
Yes, we've done it several times.
Yeah.
You just submit the, once you have a list of the serial numbers, submit it, and we'll declare them surplus.
Captain Nettles should have all of that from where we qualify
So
regularly.
I would make the proposal that we vote to accept the purchase.
That's already got the returns deducted.
Yeah, can we do it as, yes, Keesler will repurchase them and/or our deputies can,
But
yeah.
won't that change
It will.
what we pay?
Well,
Yeah, I
not
mean-
really.
Not really, because the money
No,
will
because
come from us.
we'll still pay.
Either way, that
Either way, we get the
17,400
300.
comes to the fiscal court. It's just whether it comes from us and Keesler or just Keesler's.
It's $300 either way.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so can we do it where we do and/or,
Yes.
as long as they meet the required statutory?
So Squire.
Language.
Squire.
Squire Magistrate. I want to make a motion that we accept the proposal for the purchase of the new firearms for the Sheriff's Department and allow the opportunity for our own deputies to purchase their weapons, provided that they meet the criteria set forth in statutory language,
I think it
or
covers it.
sell it back to Keesler.
All right.
So when,
I got a few these and thous to put in there too, if you'd like.
so when,
Whereas,
when a deputy chooses to purchase it, that money will actually come from you guys and go to Kessler.
Yes, I believe, from what Captain Nettles discussed, he'd accept a check written to the fiscal court from the deputy prior to us getting the firearms.
I have Cam, I have it.
But because that ultimately, to keep this number, what'd you say it was, 36?
17,400
Well,
with all the firearms. So even if it was a mixture of Keesler's and our deputies, that $300 would come either from Keesler or from a deputy.
We're still cutting the same check.
17,000, whatever.
It's going back to Keesler. Either the weapon will or the
Either or
$300.
that funding, and then our price would only be the $36,591.61.
Right.
That wouldn't change.
Either
the
way,
price, yes.
Gotcha.
our allocation.
Well, that's the key number, the 36,590.
91.61.
Yes.
All right,
Showing me the camera.
all right. So we've had
Don't ask me to repeat
We've had a
that.
motion. Is there a second? Second for Mr. Hostetler. A question?
Yes, sir.
As far as the budget, I know that they applied for that grant and we approved the budget. Is the money allocated in the budget for this?
This money is not in the Sheriff's Department budget. I don't believe.
I don't believe, I know we discussed it being in there. I don't know, Michelle might know better than I do on all that.
Yeah.
Well, all of that money.
So
will
it'll
go to-
come out of reserve for transfer,
Okay, if approved, that's a
if approved. And you didn't mention, but these duty weapons are 8 years old,
At least, yes.
at least. And one of the big items is that red dot sight.
Yes, Georgetown Police have moved to it. Most law enforcement agencies are. Like I said, it improves your accuracy. A lot of people tend to close their eyes without a red dot and only see with one eye. This has both eyes open. You see a wider field of vision, a bigger backdrop.
That's pretty huge. isn't it?
Yes, especially if you had innocence in the background of an incident.
Deputy Betson, you said that the amount from Keesler, the purchase amount would be 300, and it would also be 300 for the deputies, correct?
Yes, yes. So
Would that money
regardless,
come to
300
us?
for each gun.
I guess this is really more of a Michelle question, right? So like, if the deputies pay us the 300, Keesler's not getting that 300, so we will actually pay Keesler for that.
The money will come to us.
So then,
It'd
it-
go to-
the money we pay Keesler could actually be more than,
It could be more, I guess,
36,591.
because.
No, no,
Just adjust the amount we transfer from reserve.
right.
Is there any reason that the check couldn't be made out to Keesler by the deputy?
I
He
don't know.
can't. It meets that, so. But we all understand the net,
I know how to write.
yeah, so.
The net still turns out at 17,
Right.
whatever, at the end of the day.
And then any weapon the deputy buys back is registered to that deputy, right,
Yeah.
Right.
by the statute.
Lieutenant Benson.
There you go.
Lieutenant Benson.
Why didn't you start out to begin with up here?
It's any money that is received from a deputy that is purchasing their vehicle, their weapon, will go into reimbursements. And then we'll take that money and transfer it into the line item from which the payment to Keesler goes. So there will be an offset back.
Okay.
Okay.
But Magistrate Jones had a question about, once the deputy purchases and gets that weapon, will it be registered to the deputy at that time?
It should show, anytime there's a firearm transfer, that usually is logged by the ATF, and it'll show who's it was transferred to.
Okay. So I don't think we voted yet, though.
I have a motion.
We have a motion, we have a second.
Who's second?
Rick?
I did.
Yeah. So, any other questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
I'll let
Thank you all.
Thank you all. Lieutenant Johnson's going to talk about flock now.
We're out of money, Lieutenant.
Nonetheless, obviously, our flock cameras, we've got, we got 5? Yes, 5. I think we went live in, February or March, something like that. So we've had, 6 months, 5-6 months now. Well, flock is, obviously, like everything else, getting more and more popular, right? More and more agencies, so data storage is getting more and more and more. So instead of the reoccurring cost of $2,500 per camera, they're moving it up to $3,000 per camera. Obviously, when we signed the contract and bought them, we did not know that. So what they're doing is any agency that currently has flock under $2,500, they are allowing us to sign a 5-year contract to keep that price at $2,500 per camera versus $3,000 per camera on a renewal price. So if we sign the contract, obviously for 5 years, we're keeping that $2,500 recurring cost per camera versus if we don't sign it, we're going to have to pay $3,000 per camera. And also what they also are allowing is if we purchase, to say 5 additional this year, or it would have to be this year actually, we get those for $2,500. But if we wait till after the first of the year, if we sign the 5-year contract today or whenever, this year, there's $2,500 per camera. But if we wait till next year to add more cameras, those cameras will be $3,000 per camera. So if we add them this year, we can add them for $2,500 per camera also. So obviously, it's a no-brainer, in my opinion, to sign the 5-year contract. I mean, we can add a camera basically for free, at least one, for the savings, you know what I'm saying, by signing the contract. Obviously, we would like to add a few more cameras. I'd love to have as many as y'all will give us, but we've only had them a short time, and this information is only as good as what people tell me. And what I mean by that is we've asked our deputies to, hey, anything you get off of flock hit, let us know, right? So just off the Scott County Sheriff's Office cameras, we've recovered 4 stolen vehicles in 6 months. We've got a guy that was avoiding EPO service, obviously emergency protection order. He did not want to get served. We were able to locate him by it, which we've talked about before. We solved just a simple illegal dumping, people throwing tires in the creek. We actually located a missing person from Shelbyville about 2 weeks ago, I believe, and we have solved 2 burglaries, and 1 burglary 100% would not have been solved if it wasn't for flock, because the guy come from Urban to break into our home. It was actually an ex-firefighter's home that he was redoing out at Stonehenge. Another firefighter got a vehicle on camera. I could tell it was a Ford Explorer. I took that and put it in, and up there by that place the same amount of time, there's a white Ford Explorer. Well, I've done some investigation. Vehicle changed hands a few times. We went to Urban a couple weeks ago, and we recovered every stolen piece of property that was reported stolen because of flock. Like I said, we've recovered roughly $38,000 worth of stolen property, with property slash cars, car values and stolen property because of the flock. So like I said, I think we need to sign the 5-year contract. I'd love to add, 10 cameras if you let me, but I don't think that's going to happen, but I'll ask.
Do we have a draft contract that Cam could review?
Yes, and also, they will give that to me. Also with the sheriff, obviously, how he can't go to a contract beyond his election cycle. They said they can alter it to fix that because they understand sheriffs are like that, but they will honor the 5 years, assuming.
Yeah, if you want to send it to me, I'll review it.
Yeah, I'll have them send it to me. They sent me something the other day. It's not what I asked for, but they just sent me a price sheet, but not what I asked for, so.
Do you know if there's a hard deadline?
It's this year.
It's just this calendar year?
Yes. So we have to get the contract.
So we got a little time.
Yes, we got a little time to sign the contract. Well, obviously, the contract, we at least need to get the ball rolling. But as far as the cameras, yes, we'll have to end of this year to get them purchased.
Sure.
How much is a new camera?
Currently, $2,500. It'd be $3,000
annually.
Yeah.
Pay yearly 25.
And like we already had one camera go bad. We'd never noticed it was bad. They come and fixed it. I got an email saying, hey, we noticed the camera's not operating to our standards. We'll be there to change it tomorrow. We never noticed anything. So I got on there. I'm like, okay. So I get on there and look. It's still taking the pictures, getting the lights and plates like, it should. Never noticed they've already replaced it.
Would it be possible without jeopardizing the, I know what they are. I think everybody here knows.
Yeah.
I would like if you had a list of where you would recommend those possible new locations, would that be helpful to the court to?
So
Probably should come to us.
Do we want to know that?
Well,
You're going to see them anyway.
yeah, you're going to see them. It's not,
but what I'm saying is, there's no question that these are impacting,
Yes.
positively impacting your agency and enforcement. And, if we could see, hey, this is where we have them, and this is where we think it would be effective to add 3, add 5.
Right.
I think that would help the court have a visual of, hey, yeah, this is making a net.
correct. And yes, and that's, Captain Edels and I have already discussed that. He asked me where I'd like to place them. Well, currently, we have everything coming inbound. So if you're coming into Scott County, it's kind of how we have our cameras strategically placed. Well, I would like to have a few going out because we had a burglary out in Belvedere. Well, the one there in front of the transportation cabinet, I literally looked at every, because a canoe was stolen, so it's going to be sticking out, right? I watched every single picture for like 3 days, looked at every car. Nobody's carrying it, so he went outbound, right? So I'd like to have something going outbound to also help us aid in our investigations also. So like we got one on 460. I'd like to have one on 460 outbound, Paris Pike that is, or Frankfurt Pike, or, same way with Cincinnati Pike, having one going outbound instead of everything inbound. Kind of getting a little bit more range.
Okay. Any other questions?
Thanks for reporting back to us, because I just saw, I think they caught a bank robber in Lexington last night.
It's using flock, yes.
Yeah, and
It's good stuff.
it's
Great
good.
technology.
I think people, like anything else, when it first comes up, oh, they're invading our privacy. It's not what it is. These pictures auto-delete, like we've told you once before, every 30 days, or unless we go in there and manually save it, and we have to have a reason. And while we're in there searching, we have to put in a search code. We ask the deputies to put in their case number so we can verify, but sometimes it's not always feasible. So, like I'll use the burglary or something. That way I know if somebody, once I get audited, or if I audit, Lieutenant Betson can audit me also. He can see I was in there searching for a burglary or theft or whatever. But yeah, they are making an impact. Like I said, 4 stolen cars and one burglary that 100% would not have been solved if it wasn't for the cameras.
Just a prop too for stamping ground. I helped Don Whitlock and Stamping Ground get the first ones up in the whole county down Stamping Ground. And the very first one we put up, we caught a guy, a murder suspect, I think.
Yeah, he shot 2 people.
Town, so.
He actually wasn't murder, it was assault. He shot 2 people. They both lived, but yes.
Okay. So the things are good. Any more we can get up, I think it's a great deal if we can get people around the county.
They got 4, and we got 5 for the whole county.
And I wanted to ask, I'm sure Don got the same information you did, but if you'd reach out to him and just make sure he understands that the cost is going to go up too.
Yeah, I've already asked, I called him, he said they've already signed the contract. I just wanted to make sure he knew, because sometimes he don't keep up with as much as we do, but they're actually already signed it.
I appreciate it.
They all talk, right? Like Georgetown, Stamping Ground, you're all, can't you look at any?
Yes, so we have to have an agreement, right? So I don't care who looks at our cameras, right? So any law enforcement agency wants to see it, there it is, because it can only help each other, right? So I can, like, it's been several months ago, it might have been almost a year ago now, we had a guy that committed a robbery at the Pilot at McDonald's. This was before we had the flight. The city had them, but they gave me access to their cameras because I was a detective and we were in the process of getting them. So I was like, where's this guy been? I mean, he wasn't from here, so I typed it in. I could track him coming down 75 through different counties up in Ohio. So kind of put a timeline together, how long he'd been in it, because he ended up being from Maryland. Kind of put a timeline together of how long he's been in our area and stuff like that.
Lieutenant Benson?
We have 17 cameras right now in Scott County. There's 3 in Stamping Ground, 5 Georgetown, 5 Scott County. Then there are 4 privately owned over in the Overlook area that we are linked in with.
4 privately where?
Privately owned cameras over Overlook and what's the home over there?
Scotland Wood area.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
So they're inbound and outbound, and those aren't paid for by us at all, but they have allowed us access, so we have the ability to link in. If anybody else adds those cameras, we can link in without having to pay. So we actually have access
talk
to
to some
4 additional
HOAs.
cameras.
Exactly. No, honestly,
Yes.
we have once before. HOAs, it's a little bit cheaper for HOAs because the NCIC, the information, they can't get that, right? But we still get it. So if any of y'all in an HOA, it's crazy not to spend, even if it's $3,000 a year a piece to get an extra camera.
And that's what I was going to ask you, because Judge hit on what I've had HOAs reach out to me, I've sent them to you all.
Yeah.
Has any HOAs, they argued over the cost, and I get all that.
Right.
But has any HOA signed up, just private?
No, I talked to one while we were in the process, and that was Victoria Estates, but they got a really good camera system out there, so I think they really didn't need it. But they did kind of seem a little bit interested. But yeah, any HOA that gets them, it's just benefiting us.
Yeah.
So I want to go back to something you said about privacy, and this kind of presentation is really good because people are concerned about their privacy, and rightfully so. And I don't think I'm wrong about this. My memory, the first time the flock cameras came to us, I think we didn't.
No, that was that scanner that they were going to scan through all the license plates.
It wasn't these.
It's very similar. It's an LPR license plate reader. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, it was basically the same deal.
I believe the one you're speaking of was a movable one. You're talking about the one on the interstate.
But I think what helped the court, again, if my memory's correct, you put a policy in place.
Yes.
It's multiple pages, which we were looking to protect the privacy of our citizens, which I think we need to highlight because that's still very important. But I think we're doing that.
Yes.
But this information also helps let the community know what a benefit they are as well.
Like I said, and that's just ours. I was actually going to call Captain Lodel today and just kind of get their numbers because I know he keeps up with it also. But I had to go to Louisville today, and I honestly didn't get time to pull his numbers. But I know they've.
Thank you for the presentation because this really does. It gets the information out. Folks can see the benefit.
Yeah.
All right, thank you all.
Thank
you. We'll table that and you'll get me the contract.
Yeah, I'll email them tomorrow or Monday. Yeah.
Thanks so much, you all. EMS new hire. Chris Runyon's on the clock here.
Good evening, Judge, magistrates. I got a few this evening. We'll start with our community paramedic position. We interviewed for and selected Brandon Rimley, who is former director of Georgetown Scott County EMS. 30 years of experience, and we're excited that he was interested in coming back and doing this for us. He's going to start work on September 11th, if you guys approve, and his starting salary will be $34.27 per hour.
Questions or comments?
Will he get his critical care paramedic certification? I didn't, it wasn't on his resume.
I'm sorry?
Well, he get his advanced cert in critical care.
Oh, yeah.
In community
paramedic.
paramedicine, I'm sorry.
Yes, that class that actually starts on the Monday, the 28th. It's a 12-week class, and then he'll be required to get his IBSC certification. Absolutely.
So is this a new position or?
Half of the funds will be covered from our opioid settlement funds.
Motion. Second.
So we got a motion here.
Yeah.
And a second from Mr. Ellison. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. And before we go any further, after you read all these, EMS will be fully staffed.
I don't get to ask.
Well, he stole your thunder, Rick.
Go ahead, Chris.
So we have 2 full-time EMT positions that we're requesting for approval. Jeremiah Puffenbarger and Austin Tarter. Both those gentlemen will be starting on or after August 28th, and their pay will be $13.10 an hour. Austin is in paramedic class and actually in our paramedic class, so.
Great.
Just started last week.
Motion. Second from Mr. Ellison. Any other questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
1 part-time paramedic, Daniel Lobeck, starting pay $15.89 an hour. And he, again, will start after August 28th.
Motion from Mr. Hostetler. Second from Mr. Jones. Any other questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Okay, and then I have 5 part-time EMTs, Grace Breeding, John Nunn, Matthew Lacey, Youssef Ahadi, and Megan Isaacs, and they will start on or after August 28th at $11.48 per hour.
Motion from David Livingston, I think, got up first, and Kelly was second.
Right.
Any other questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. And then one other piece. Tell us how many young, well, not necessarily young, but how many students we have in our EMT class? 23?
24.
24.
24, yeah. It's
So-
full, over full. We usually cap it at 20, but we have 24.
Trying to grow our own and giving people opportunities, and it makes me proud. So,
Yeah, and 11 in our paramedic class.
so this segue,
It's not segue.
this is very timely, going into this EMS building project, and I'm going to ask Phil and Ben, who is with us from Branch Carroll. What I am asking you to consider is the list of revisions, and we would approve the list of revisions, and my recommendation for consideration, there were 4 alternates in the original bid. There was operable partition in the education room, geothermal HVAC, folding apparatus bay doors, and then epoxy flooring. With the price that came in from the low bidder, we were high, and that was the reality. So we looked at value engineering with this list of revisions with the low bidder, and Cam confirmed that since all of the bids came in higher than what was budgeted, we can enter into negotiations with the low bidder. Would you like to comment on that?
No, I think that's fair, and, also I think we got some feedback from Ransom Carroll, and the city attorney agreed with that as well.
So what we have been doing is negotiating and looking at this list, but we need to approve an official list of revisions that will allow the low bidder, Marilla Construction, to develop a contract price for your consideration.
Correct.
And then, would you all like to comment any on that? I think you had one thing you wanted to point out on the list of revisions that is actually a duplicate, like a typo.
Yes, sir. Items 6 and 10 are duplicates, so number 10 could be struck from the list, bringing the total deduction to $1,155,700.
And everyone has to realize that these are, the top three are estimates. So once we approve this possible list, then they will give us hard prices for a contract consideration. The other thing, is there any interest from anyone to consider including in our request the geothermal? I think
we should keep. I think so too. I think we should keep it.
It's $49,000. The return on that investment,
That'll be a quick recovery.
That will be a quick recovery.
At that price.
What other questions or comments? And then what I want to, while we're talking about all of this, just trying to put everything on the table, and this, what I'm about to share, I passed out paperwork to you, and it's a map or an aerial picture. It's down there on the bottom, Kelly. That one, David, if you hold that up, show everybody. So this is from Kentucky American, and the Toyota donated this 7.2 acres. So we are on this side that we're on of Lexus Way. The only water availability is to have an extension from that main down towards towards 75 to like 2,700 feet. And they require you to use their contractors, their specs. And I shared that by email today. And this is totally separate from the Branstetter Carroll. The bid that we put out in Marilla was the low bidder. This is totally separate. It's with Kentucky American. But I asked a couple questions to Kentucky American if they would consider allowing the use of PVC instead of the lead. I think it's DI lead,
Ductile iron.
Ductile iron. They said that's their specs and that's what they're sticking with. I thought I'd ask. And then the other item was, if you'll notice, the red line goes all the way to the boundary, the far boundary of the property. Well, I asked them, why are we required to install that to that boundary? And they shared that it is a requirement of the Public Service Commission that when a main line is extended, that it has to be extended to the boundary of that property. Now, in the email that I sent you today, I shared also the opportunity that exists once the property next to us or the property next behind us, if they extend a water line off of that main that we have, we will receive a rebate for 3 years in the amount equal to the estimated water usage for those new extensions. Now, my understanding also is that if it doesn't happen within 10 years, then we don't get the rebate. But Dwayne, you may be familiar with this. If anybody wants to speak to it, but in Phil and it's normally operating. But the good thing is, the area behind us and then towards Cherry Blossom, they've not been developed yet, but they are very attractive. Someday they will be developed, hopefully within the next 10 years, but I can't promise anything. But we will realize a significant rebate if it's a commercial development, a higher water user, yada, yada, yada. And if you all want to comment to it, anybody, you just can't bank on it, but the potential exists.
And you really don't have a choice. They're going to make you take it wherever
And we have to have water.
Right.
And I want to remind you that we met, Branstetter Carroll and I, Ben, were you in on that meeting?
Yes.
When we met with Toyota?
Yes, sir.
And we explored the possibility of tying on there to the daycare, but the size of their lines did not allow for the amount of water that we needed to properly serve our station. So that's why we have to do a main And Ben, if I didn't say that right, tell me, but I think that was the,
That was General Justice. Yes, sir.
yeah. So I've explored everything I can explore, and this is just the reality for us to do it. You know, I really feel strongly, you know, the cost, if we had to buy this property, would have been over $2 million if we were buying it from a private seller. I'm very confident of that, looking at property values and appraisals. You know, it is what it is. Any comments or questions? This is separate from what we're talking about, but it's in the big picture of the cost of this project.
So I did some numbers, Judge, and so if you take out the revisions versus what Marilla had proposed, the total would be $6,830,300. Plus you had the 425 in for the water. So we're looking at a total project cost roughly $7,255,300. Our half would be $3,627,100,650.
If those estimates come back, yeah.
But that's kind of give us a ballpark about what we're looking at.
And then the other item I want to remind everybody is we have setting aside $1 million, $1,001,000 of ARPA funds that will be used on this project that's ARPA eligible. And so our general fund dollars will be reduced by that ARPA funds. Does that make sense? Rick, you're looking at me like
I was getting ready to say, I have a specific question.
I have a question.
Go for it.
So this was, the design was myself on the court. I guess my big question that I just have is about deleting the EMS bay. Like we had 3, now we're down to 2.
So great question.
And I'm scared that might be short-sighted.
Well, let me speak to it. And Ben and Phil, if you all want to speak to it. First thing I went to was Chris and said, Chris, if we cut a bay off, could we survive? And he said, absolutely. But what Mike and the team from Branson Carroll have shared with me is if we decide to eliminate that bay, when we build the structure with only 2 bays, in the outside wall of the bay, there will be a 12-foot knockout.
I believe it's 14 foot, but yes.
14-foot knockout. So whenever the city of Georgetown builds the fire station, we would add the bay in that construction process and have easy access to the third bay. Does that make sense? And great question. I'm glad you brought it up. What else do you have?
I was just going to ask real quick, and you just mentioned Georgetown. When you did all the research of where the next EMS station needed to go, will this station serve primarily or mainly within city limits, population-wise?
David, I'm not sure how far where the city limit line is on that side of town, but it'll give us really quick access to 75 North, which is kind of an issue for us now because coming down from Sadieville, you can't, you have to come all the way down to turn around and go back up on the north side. So it'll serve the Tri-Point Road area, definitely that side of town, the city limits, and then the interstate as well, and out Cynthiana Road, but I'm not sure where
the point is it's a huge benefit to the city.
Oh, absolutely.
Can I speak to the domino of how this helps us as well, our community? So what happens is if this successfully is built, we will have 2 ambulances at Lexus Way. The plan then is for what's been communicated to me by our colleagues at the city is that the city administrative offices would move and take the place on Broadway. We will leave 1 ambulance at Broadway. We will then move 1 ambulance to Jacobs Lane along with our battalion chief. And then we'll have Sadieville and Stamping Ground as well covered. And the big picture, I think your new District 4 will have much shorter response times, but District 3 will have shortened response times by 2-3 minutes to a lot of spots. And when you're talking about a heart attack, when you're talking about, a car wreck, those minutes matter. And what we're doing is really helping the entire community, and it's a joint effort between, the fiscal court and city council. So you want to add anything to it?
No, Joe, I think you hit it on the head. I know it's relatively close from where we are at Broadway up to Jacobs, but when you consider the Marketplace Square and the Kroger Plaza, and then on out the bypass there to those communities, Seminole Trail, and that ties in there. I mean, we're going to be, I mapped it out. It's 3 minutes closer to those residences.
So I think we're really trying to, and this all started with this capital projects plan, and we're addressing the needs now, but into the future. And our community's growing, and this is what I think government should do: provide good services and do it in a physically responsible way. And we're trying our darndest to do that, but we're trying to do that and looking to the future as well. So,
I had a question for Cam. Cam, is there any opioid settlement money that can be used on this? I mean, we're using opioid settlement money on our community partner, or
I don't know. Community paramedicine.
Or, yeah, paramedicine.
We'll have to. I would have to do some.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that seems like it might be a stretch, but we can research it. Yeah.
One aspect we could look at is the education aspect.
Yeah.
If we could provide some classes, and
A lot of those dollars, when it comes to construction money, they don't want to bump.
Just restricted in
Yeah.
programming more than this.
Construction and all that
Yeah.
other stuff gets.
so we're really not looking at asking you to approve numbers. All I'm asking you to do is approve the list, and then the geothermal alternate to request a contract price for consideration. Motion.
I'll second.
Second.
I have a question too.
Yes, sir.
With the bid that we did get, did you talk to Georgetown, the city council about it?
I have shared everything with Mayor and Devin, and they've gotten everything, and the feedback I've gotten has been positive. But once we get that contract price, then we will consider it contingent upon the approval of the Georgetown City Council. Make sense?
Approve the list and get a geothermal.
The revision list with 10 removed, and including the alternate of the geothermal.
Alternate number 2.
Yes. That was on the original bid tab sheet. So.
I made a motion.
Rob seconded. Any other questions? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. So you all will take that and now communicate with Marilla.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you all for being here. We still got a little business to do, though.
Yes, sir.
And then we know about the water line. Once we approve accepting a bid, then we'll ask for your all's approval on the water line. Now, just since, to let Phil and Ben get out of here, Farmers Market Downtown Pavilion bid advertisement, I shared a site plan there with you all of the footprint. You all have seen the pictures of the Farmers Market, but this site plan will have a new entrance off of Broadway. And it's right there, if you can see it, that opening. Because of the movement inward of the market, the recommendation is to move the entrance, and you can see it there. City Council is going to consider this on Monday night. It's already been to their traffic committee. They got favorable feedback there. So I'm asking you to approve putting this out to bid contingent upon City Council approving it on Monday night.
What was it? Why did we move it in? It was a site distance issue?
No.
Utilities.
The daggone utility line.
Kentucky Utilities.
And we really wanted to bury those lines on Broadway, but we don't have the money. And it moved it in, but.
I mean, it's still nice.
Yeah, no,
well.
You just run extension cords and duct tape.
So, Rick Hostetler.
So a couple comments. One thing is, I actually really like them moving the entrance. That would have been beneficial if we left the pavilion where we originally were gonna put it, right up there in the corner. But now that we gotta move it from the power lines or direct bury the power lines, and that's not gonna happen. But so I've been down there several weekends in the past, in recent weekends, and talked to the folks that are down there, that, they're setting up their, selling vegetables. I don't know if you guys have been down there, but there's a lot of stuff down there now. Anyhow, this, where it's positioned now, in my view, gives opportunity for the vendors. They'll pull their vehicles around in behind there, and they'll set up there. And this may turn out to be the best spot for it.
Well, we pick up from calculation like 4 additional parking spots.
Yeah. And moving this entrance cleans up a little bit of zigzagging that's always been going on.
Yeah.
So, one other question, Judge. But when you move it, I understand why we move it in, but now you're getting vulnerable on the north side and to the west side. So now we weren't worried about cars. Is that going to change the structure of it at all, or the structure will stay the same?
The structure, and Phil, y'all can speak to that. Ben, my understanding, around the posts are going to still be 18-inch
Concrete.
Okay.
Correct.
And then some of those posts, and I don't know which ones, will be charging stations.
Yep.
So now Rick brought up something, and I think it's, and it's something I think we could come back and have a standalone, but it's for another. You want to talk about what you brought up to me?
I had a conversation with the judge today, and it came from a conversation either this past Saturday or 2 Saturdays ago, talking to some of the vendors down there about a restroom facility. Currently, and I kind of wish the jailer was still here, but currently the jail, the staff, they're allowing all those vendors, because they're down there probably 6 hours from the time they start setting up, customers come, and then they break down and leave. So they got to have somewhere to use the restroom. And that was brought to my attention in a conversation. I was looking for a friend of mine who's a vendor, and his wife said, well, he's over at the jail. And I said, at the jail? He said, yeah, using the restroom. And so, there's quite a few folks involved that are vendors that are down there probably about 6 hours total, plus or minus. Anyhow, I had that conversation with the judge, and as he was telling me, he'd already considered that, and that's probably a pretty good cost.
It would be a significant cost, and what I would.
So we even he started looking at, renting things, some kind of portable.
But what I would say is, in the future, consideration of just a standalone bathroom up near Washington, that would only be open during the times of the farmers market. But that's something that our colleagues at the city might want to consider. But I don't believe, I think we need to move forward with what we have and consider that in the future. And even it would be cheaper the closer you build it to Washington, that's where the sewer is, the cheaper it would be. So I think that's definitely something to talk about. I think it's definitely
who's in charge of running it each week?
Tourism.
So tourism for now could rent a porta potty every Saturday and have it picked up every week.
Yeah.
I think it's what they do now for the downtown Thursday night or the concerts. I think it's what they do.
And then I got on.
That's like $20.
I got on a website. They have those trailers that are porta potties.
Yeah.
Those are a little bit high dollar. So, but in respect to Rick's comments this afternoon, I just wanted to mention that, and there's some merit to it.
Park probably has needed it for many years.
Yeah. But it's something I think that could be added down the road, and something that would be positive. So
on the EV stations, are we going after a grant for that? Because there is a ton And they're handing out money like
Mr. Livingston, we will
Look into that.
investigate that. I would be lying if I said I'd thought about that. That's why we've got you on this fiscal court. All right.
So what do we need to go forward, Judge?
I need a motion to accept, or a motion to advertise for bids the farmer's market contingent upon the city council approving the site plan.
So moved.
Motion? Second? Any other questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
It's always a pleasure.
No, we'll be in touch. Thank you all. Next is the courthouse clock equipment bid, and that was shared with you. The low bid and the only bid was from Verdon Clock Company, well-respected. I did my research on them and talked to a few people, and even emailed out my colleagues at the other judge executives on the listserv, and their name came back several times of this is who you need to deal with. The bid includes, the bid of $49,780 includes new faces that you can access from up inside. And it's also new clock hands. We're missing clock hands on this side. And flew away, but it also includes a new controller mechanism and some placement of equipment. Now, we will have to pay for the crane rental to do this installation, but hopefully after that, we won't have to pay for any more crane rentals. So it'd be my recommendation to accept this bid with motion from Mr. Ellison, second from Mr. Jones. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. The next item is Soccer Complex Lyle Road mowing bid advertisement. I shared a map with you all. Chad, will you hold that up? I'm asking you all to approve us putting out the bid for mowing. I think the fields actually would be mowed 28 times. The common grounds out, like the retention basin and such would be mowed like 14 times. And then also the fields would be fertilized and also weed prevention put in. And we'd put this all in a scope of work and advertise and see what kind of price we get. We bring it back to you all, and you all consider if you want to accept it. In my opinion, we've spent a lot of money on the facility. It's going to get a lot of use. That grass needs some help, and JR's team has been out there and took the finish mower, and we let the grass go to seed, and now we've taken the finish mower out there and mowed it. And he's going to probably mow it again, and then JR's team is going to go put down another, it's a slit seeder, right, JR? Yep. And we're going to reseed these fields here in the next week or two, and very hopeful that we get a better amount of grass. Now, JR and I have already talked, and we have the ability to contract with a company that would come and irrigate. If we're not getting the rain, we can put water on it with traveling sprinklers, and that would cover us this time. Where we had hoped last year we'd get a little rain, we didn't get it, and that's what happened. So, would there be any questions about this?
No, I would just say it's probably too hot to see you right now.
Yeah, we won't
Wait till
see
70 degrees.
We won't see till like next week or the following week, right, JR?
Yes.
When it cools down. Motion?
You're just putting it out to bid.
All to put out a bid.
Second.
Second.
Or the whole complex?
Just that.
Just the new field.
Yeah. So we have motion second. Any other questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. That brings me to our homeless, Director of Homeless Intervention and Affordable Housing. I got it backwards.
Almost.
Candace, appreciate you being here.
Yeah.
Appreciate you bringing this opportunity to the court for consideration. Would you share some data about this?
Yes, so we are wanting to apply for rapid rehousing funding through the COC local competition. Our grant is due Monday, and so we're rapidly working on that. Rapid rehousing is something that we've been talking about. Honestly, that's something Joe Pat and I've been talking about for years, even in my previous role. It is a short and medium term assistance program for folks who are unhoused. It is modeled with the Housing First model, so getting folks into housing as quickly as possible. Rapid rehousing has an emphasis on wraparound services, so once those folks are housed, then providing them with as many services as we can, so that way they can become stable and be able to move out of that program. My office, that I'm in, would be helping with landlord relations and securing units and doing the grant management. And then we would be contracting out the client direct services to a nonprofit in town. And Transform Scott County has agreed to be that nonprofit to provide the case management and support services for those clients. So we would just be working with them to provide those wraparound services. And I can answer questions too.
So the commitment would be half of $38,249. That money would be, if we successfully win the grant, that money would be out of next year's budget. What questions does anyone have?
Have you,
How do you do that?
Well, we're applying for a grant.
And we would have to vote on it again
No.
in next year's budget.
Yes, we'd have to put the money into that budget.
Right, okay.
But it would not come out of this year's budget.
so when you're saying move them into sustainable housing, I mean, have y'all already identified, I mean, what does that look like in our community? Have you got places that?
Yeah, so luckily we would have time to identify that. A lot of programs work with their local housing authorities. Then you work with local, multi-unit owners and request that they set aside a unit or two, so that way you can have your rapid rehousing just in those specific units.
Yeah. You say even you work with the housing authority?
A lot of communities do. I'm talking to Bryn now about if we can make that work in our community, but that is a common thing.
Because a while back when we were discussing this a year or two ago or whatever, I mean, the local housing, they weren't even taking people.
They still have a list of like 400.
Right. So,
is that right?
Yeah, so this would be, I mean, they could set aside units, but it would not be run through the housing authority, if that makes sense.
It does.
Yes.
But, yeah,
There's still some work to be done.
You're right. No, I get it. Because I know some folks that have been trying to purchase a house and apartments, and in our county, most things are full. So I just wondered I know there's ways, and I know you're looking into.
Yes.
You got to think outside the box, I guess is what I'm driving at.
Yes. So this would just be one thing, and unfortunately, it came really early in my time in this position. And if we pass it up, then we're kind of looking at 2 years out from being able to get that money into the community. But yes, I'm looking at lots of different avenues on how we can create more housing units for all the levels. One of the popular metaphors right now in the housing world is musical chairs. So, I mean, we have to have enough chairs for everybody to sit in. And so it's not just the low income affordable housing that I'm looking at. It's housing across the board too.
Any other questions, comments? Motion from Mr. Ellison. Second from Mr. Livingston. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
All right.
This will now go to City Council tomorrow. Via Zoom, I understand.
Yes.
So, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Joe Pat's got one more thing, and I'll let you go home and go to bed.
I've got 5 or 6.
All right, good. Now, what I'm handing to you is just a concept to think about. And what I'm asking you to consider, and JR and I have been down here and looked at this, is we know that we need pickleball courts in Scott County. And we've got a construction project going on up above at the sheriff's office that's moving all kinds of dirt. I want to ask you all to consider letting me get a price and get your feedback, but I want to get a price on to put a drain pipe in there. Our existing tennis courts are the tennis courts that are shown here, the 4. We'd have to put a drain pipe right there behind that because it falls off. But then I would like to get dirt moved in and then leveled, and then JR, could your team put in the gravel and then spread it out? So we'd have to contract with somebody to put the drain pipe in and then move the dirt and bring in the dirt from the construction site, just level it off, and then JR and then would put gravel over it, roll it, and leave it. Then next spring, we could consider whether we wanted to allocate the monies to put pickleball courts there. And really what looks like to me would be the best would be 2 tennis courts on the outside and then 4 pickleball courts on the inside. And the domino of this is if we could get this done. I've talked about other places, and I don't really want to go into details, but looking at other tennis courts in the community that could be repurposed for pickleball as well. So all I'm asking is for your feedback. If this is something you all think we ought to look at getting a price just to put the drainage tile in, put the dirt in, and then put some gravel down, and then it's there, and I think we could save significant monies on once we decided what we wanted to do next spring in the next year's budget.
And I guess the rush to do something now is because we got the people there with the dirt right now, right?
I thought we might save money because they're mobilized. And if I'm wrong, tell me.
Can't we just drive down the hill and drop it off for us?
Well, that's what I'm trying to get done. But
It's probably in their contract, they gotta get rid of it anyway, right?
Well,
JR.
they might have to reuse it back, but well, it's a basement area.
That's a
so
basement,
they might
man, it's
have
gonna be a
more
lot
than
there.
So they might need to.
So,
Right.
yeah. And I'm just trying to see if we could save money for something we know we need in the future. And if we don't do it now, we can certainly do it. Yeah.
Or costlier.
Yeah. And all I'm asking you is for feedback. Do y'all want me to try to look at this and get a price?
Yes.
All right. Is there,
Pickleball courts are very
David, what do you have? Anybody else have anything? Anybody in the audience have any new business? Motion to adjourn? Second. All those in favor? We are adjourned.
Before next Friday?
Yeah.